everybody. Welcome to Revival Town Podcast. I'm Chuck Tate. That's Andy King.
We are finally back in the studio.
We are back. You know, I missed you.
Oh, I missed you too, even though you kept bugging me with phone calls and texts and... No, not really. Not really.
Yeah,
you doing all right?
I wondered how come I was blocked.
I was hoping you'd get the message, but...
Yeah. You got to spell it out for me.
I know. Well, we want to say sorry to everyone. We had a technical difficulties a few weeks ago. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the panel that we did last week.
Yes.
That was recorded live at Love Peoria. What a great night that was.
A great night. You do a great job.
Thanks, mate. It was fun. We for those who are listening for the first time, I run an organization called Dream Center Peoria, which is right downtown Peoria, with many different avenues, including a homeless shelter and after-school programming and all different things. And we do an event every year called Love Peoria, which is really just our end-of-year event so that we can let people know what's been going on, what are some of the new things that are happening, do something a bit fun, and also, I mean, you know, it's our financial night, right? It's where we can share the vision, and the goal that night was to raise $150,000, and we hit the goal.
Yeah,
so
remarkable.
I mean, it really is. Every year we come away scratching our heads, going, "Man, it can only be God," you know.
Right. Well, first the vision, then the provision.
Yeah.
And I think you guys do an excellent job of communicating what that vision is, and it's a great night, and it's just casting vision, but also showing people the results of what God can do when people give to see what Dream Center is doing. All the meals that are provided, all the people that are taken off the streets, all the lives that are impacted, and not just those who live at Dream Center, but those who serve at the Dream Center.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's some of the cool things that we hear from that night is, you know, we have a lot of our volunteers there. And you know this, you know, you can't run a church without volunteers either. And, you know, it's one of those nights where we can say thank you publicly, even though a lot of them don't want that. You know, they just do it because they feel God's called them to do it. So it was fun. But then during the night, we did this panel that you helped me interview our key leaders, which was the podcast from last week.
Yep.
And crazy story with that, right? That was one of the things that we, after last year, we interviewed my dad, remember, on the stage.
For the 20-year anniversary.
20-year anniversary. And so we thought, well, let's do that again with the podcast. And so we interviewed the ministry leaders. Didn't know how it was going to go, right? They've never done this before. They've never really interviewed with us. And it's amazing how God chooses certain things to help someone, encourage them to give, right?
Right.
There was a lady that was not planning on coming to that night. She had other plans. A friend said, "Come on, let's go to Love Peoria." She comes in and saw that panel 20 minutes, and was so inspired that she wrote a check for $50,000.
What?
That's what triggered her to give. Because she saw our heart to share the gospel with those that are coming in that are struggling and hurting, and she's like, I'm going to invest in that. And so $50,000.
That is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that those on the panel did a great job. They were all very well spoken, and it was cool. I loved Robbie, man.
Robbie's
he's
cool
got a little
cat.
bit of preach in him.
Oh yeah.
You know, I could tell he could throw it down.
Oh yeah, Robbie's a cool cat. He's been with us for, I think, about a year and a half, 2 years after I came. He was one of he was the major first hire I did.
Okay.
Because we got the building and we wanted to do after school programming.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, he's been faithful all these years, and Krista is new, and I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
And of course, Christy, we had on the podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
She went from living in her car to running the homeless shelter, remarkable. If you missed that episode, go back a couple weeks ago, check it out. And then I thought, I just loved Denise's heart, and her compassion. Compassion just oozes out of her. So I can't think of a better fit for somebody to lead Zoe House.
Yeah, and this will air on Monday, right? The Monday. On the Wednesday of this week, if you guys could be praying, we go to the county board in a county right next to Peoria, Tazewell, to really pitch our vision for the home, Zoe House, for teen moms, young moms, and we are trying to purchase a home in that county. We've had a bit of opposition, right, because of residents fairly close, even though it's more rural. That's what we wanted. We wanted it more rural so these girls could breathe a little. So this Wednesday night, it could get a bit feisty. So in the meeting, yes. So if people could be praying for us this Wednesday, just that everything goes through. We've had two meetings already with zoning and land use. But then this is the final one. If they okay it, we will close on the house within a week after that. So
this episode goes live on Monday, November 18th. It's Wednesday the 15th. 13th. This goes live on Monday the 13th.
Yeah.
The date to pray is Wednesday the 15th. And maybe you're listening and today's Wednesday the 15th. Please pray.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I know there's going to be people who are going to be listening to this after that date. Well, you can still pray for this project. I mean, we're quite a few months away from it. If we get the house, there's still a lot of stuff we need to do. Early 2024 is when we want to open it. So, yeah. So thank you for listening to the podcast last week with the panel. It was great to re-listen to it as well.
Right, and someone who was not on the podcast but who spoke at the event was Kristen Dreesen, who was on that week.
Yeah,
on the podcast that week, and I loved the talk that she gave.
Yeah,
she was awesome.
It was tough for her. She touched on it a little bit, but she was meant to come in on the afternoon of the day before. Got stranded in Dallas, did not get in until an hour and a half before the event, and lost all her luggage.
Yeah.
So we were having to run to Target and get her stuff.
Get
and
her toiletries.
Yeah,
She was in her jogging suit. Yeah. It's like, she's like, this is my pajamas.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter what she was wearing. She rocked it.
Yeah, it was a great night. And that's another great episode. Kristen works for Bob Goff. She heads up the Young Moms Home in San Diego. And so, if you go back just a few weeks and look for Kristen Dreesen, you'll be able to hear her heart on what we're trying to do at the Dream Center. And Denise, who you talked about on the panel, is the lady that's heading that up for us here.
Yeah.
So it was a good night.
Good stuff. It's good to be back.
Right, and
here
you
we are.
mentioned
I just got back.
I know, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do something completely different today. Chuck last year went away to like a conference, really, wasn't it? I mean, that's what it was.
Yep.
And it was something that from that we have had a lot of guests on our show because of the type of people you were around. And so what we thought we would do today, Chuck has just got back from Florida. Him and his son went down there. And so we're going to dig into this. It's not really a conference, though, is it? What would you call it?
A gathering, perhaps?
Yeah,
it's a gathering for pastors, leaders, and influencers who want to use their digital platform to share the gospel.
Yeah.
So it's called DBG Summit, which stands for Digital Billy Graham's Summit. So it's not associated with the Billy Graham Association, but it was really in Matt Brown's heart. He's been on Revival Town
Yeah.
And he's an author and an influencer and a speaker.
I just saw he was on Jay John's podcast.
Yes.
Did you see this week?
I saw that he was on there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of people listening will know who Jay John is, but he would be one of the main evangelists in England. Like, he's a big deal in the UK. So to see him on the podcast with Jay John was really cool.
Really cool. And Matt's a great guy who was just at Rock Church a few weeks ago with Stephen McWhirter. And all those connections happened a year and a half ago when Ashton and I went. And the one thing I'll say about Matt Brown is he is a true kingdom guy. What jazzes him is to elevate others and to connect these kingdom connections. So really this gathering is a gathering, and the organization that he runs is called Think Eternity. And their heart is to train pastors, leaders, and influencers to be digital Billy Grahams. Billy Graham was the greatest evangelist ever. So let's use social media. Let's use TikTok. Let's use Facebook. One of the speakers was one of 50 global certified Canva media influencer. He's an expert, a Canva media expert. So have you heard of Canva?
Yeah.
Yep. There's only 50. And this guy named Roger, and I'll share some of the notes. It was so good.
Yeah.
But
So today we're going to dig into this a little bit more. Chuck is our guest, so to speak, but really he's just going to be sharing his experience from being in Florida. You did get a good tan. I've got to say, you're looking pretty.
We did some fishing too.
Yeah.
I have a couple funny stories.
How many did you catch?
One. I didn't catch any. Ashton caught one, but it wasn't in Florida. It was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, at a rest stop. Not at a rest stop, but
what? Was it in the fridge? You just threw your rod into the fridge?
So
or what?
if you come into Chattanooga, there's a beautiful lake.
Yeah.
And I did a staff meeting via Zoom.
Yeah.
So I just pulled over into the staff meeting so he could fish, and then I fished with him. I still didn't catch anything, but he did catch a bass.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, way to go.
Yeah, but we didn't catch anything in Florida, but we did see some gators.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then I'll tell the story a little bit later. But yeah, I split my toe open.
Oh yeah. You text me about that. Yeah.
And I have, this is kind of crazy. So we drove. We were gonna fly, then we were gonna rent a car, and long story short, I just put 2 tires on my car and I drove my own car.
Yeah.
And
just on 2 tires? Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. What's a motorcycle?
No. Normally I have 4.
With a sidekick. No. The reason I drove is because Ashton is 16 and he can take his test to get his license in February, but he has to have so many hours.
Yeah.
So he drove 15 of the hours.
Oh, so that knocked it out pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
he definitely. He got 8 night hours in. He only needs 10, so he's real close. But anyway, so this is crazy. One of our first days there, we're driving and we're at a stoplight. It's 10:30 at night. We're in Lakeland, Florida, across the street from a power plant, and some young dude, is walking across the street with a guitar and a backpack strapped to his back, a hoodie over him, walking, not even paying attention to the traffic, walking through the crosswalk, and he was crocheting a dream weaver, like a dream. I don't know what they're called, like some type of
crocheting,
like he was
like
there
wool,
was yarn,
like,
and he was making a dream catcher.
But he was walking, doing it.
Yeah, walking with the hoodie on across the street, 10:30 night, with his backpack and a guitar strapped to him. like okay, yeah, I'm just making a blanket. It's gonna get cold here. I'm gonna be living under the bridge with the gators. But no, he was making this dream catcher thing. Like,
that is crazy.
Yeah, it was.
I got a story.
Interesting.
I spoke a few weeks back. It has got something to do with this, but
okay.
and it's a little bit the surprise element that you've just talked about. I was preaching at a church in South Barrington. So if you know church world at all, you'll know South Barrington is the home of Willow Creek.
Right.
So I was asked to go and preach at a church called the Practice Church up in South Barrington. So I'm like, man, there's got to be connection there, right? And this is one of the wealthiest areas in the United States. It's where Michael Jordan used to live.
Okay.
Right. So we go up, and it's a little, it's a different type of church than what I've been used to, and great people. Love being there. Really good. Talked about Dream Center and stuff like that, and a lot of the guys. So this was actually I don't want to call it a split, because it was planted out of Willow. Back in the day when Bill was still the pastor there, they went to this new
Bill Hybels,
yeah. They went to this new model where they were going to do different types of worship expression on a Sunday. So you had your main campus and everything going on there, but then you'd have a Spanish church, Portuguese church, and then other things as well. Like this was like a liturgical type setting church, right? Mm-hmm. This church was that. They met at Willow, and then when everything went pear-shaped with Bill Hybels, they just asked if they could go and carry this on, but off property, and create their own church. So they did. Within the room, there was a lot of ex-Willow Creek staff members.
Oh, wow.
So it was really interesting to talk with them and chat with them, and it's night and day from Willow, and I could see why it is, right? They've been in the midst of not a performance as in it's a performance they do, but a Sunday, there's a lot that goes on, right? Light, sound, camera. This was not, like, there wasn't even a projector for me to show a video. Like, this was stripped down all the way to, you had a leaflet come in, and that was the order of service.
Okay.
And so to be honest, it was very refreshing.
Yeah, okay.
It really was refreshing.
Right, yeah.
So
you got saved again.
So I got saved again, and yeah. But afterwards, this is what I'm getting to.
That's right, you got baptized.
Yeah. Afterwards, this lady comes up to me and her husband, but she was doing the main talking, and she had these 2 bags. And she's like, hey, I'd spoken to the pastor, and he told me about what you do at the homeless shelter, and we've got these 2 bags of crocheted scarves. There's 40 of them, right? Sent
in by a guy in Florida who lives
no,
I'm kidding.
No, but this is what threw me. This is what threw me. She was saying, I've got these bags that my husband makes while he's watching TV, and he's standing right next to her. And it totally,
whoa.
Because normally, like, the guys aren't doing the crocheting in the corner when the TV is on, right? And I'm not joking, mate. These are the nicest scarves we have ever given out to our homeless guests.
He makes them while he's watching
TV. I turned to him and said, you must be watching a lot of TV, because there was 40 of them.
Wow.
But they were gorgeous. But when you mentioned crochet, my mind went back to that.
Right. That's great.
So let's dig into your trip. Tell us a bit about, as you get there, you've been to this type of event before, so you knew a little bit about what it was going to be like, but this was a different location, is that right?
Yep. So the first time we went, it was in Kansas City. This time it was in Lakeland, Florida, on the campus of Southeastern University, which is an Assembly of God Bible college.
Okay.
So I went to North Central Minneapolis. This is Southeastern in Florida.
Yeah.
And I've never been to the campus before. It's beautiful. They have a football stadium. It sits on a lake. And the
football stadium sits on the lake?
No. Yes, it kind of wobbles. And No. The campus there's a really nice lake in front of the campus. And we were in a building that's called the Welcome Center. And it's a beautiful, 3-story facility. And we were on this top level in the big picture glass windows overlooking this lake. It was just a really beautiful setting. And it's going to be there every year from now on. And the Southeastern's worship team did some of the worship. Stephen McWhorter flew in for the second day and did some worship. And we did that in a stairwell where you could hear the echoes.
Oh, yeah.
It was just really, really cool. Just really special.
Yeah, if people want to check out Chuck's social media, Chuck E. Tate, at Chuck E. Tate, correct?
Yep.
you've got some pictures and even some video that you have.
And I have more that I'm going to be uploading.
Yeah. Because you become this influencer, right?
Yeah, well, that's how I cut my foot open. I was doing a video on the beach. We'll come back to that. You gotta listen to the end so you can hear what happened. But yeah, it was phenomenal. So we ended up staying about 20 minutes away in an Airbnb, and we had breakfast with Joe and Angel McGee, our good friends who've been on Revival Town.
Yeah.
We had breakfast with them, which was really special. But I've never done this before. I've stayed in an Airbnb a few times. I'm sure you have as well.
Yep.
But this was the first time we've ever stayed in an Airbnb where the owners actually live there. So it's almost as if you're staying with friends, but you're paying them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So this sounds, with what you're saying, right? A lot of people are like, oh, that's weird. But back in the day, a bed and breakfast was exactly that.
Yes.
Right? A bed and breakfast was, you got a bed and you got your breakfast, but you were staying in the home of the person. Now, I've done a bed and breakfast in the UK many, many years ago. I haven't done it over here. But when we're looking at Airbnbs, we're the same as you. Like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I want to be able to go and not worry about the guy down the hall or...
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't know if I would even do it again. I probably would. It was a very positive experience, and the reason we booked it actually is my son Ashton. He's the one who found it.
Yeah.
Because they had a pool, which we didn't swim in, and then we were so busy, and then there was a lake that we did fish in, and we didn't catch anything.
And that was on property?
That was
or close?
The lake was really close to the property. Okay. It's in that little neighborhood there. But when we booked it, we thought the lake was on the property. However, before we booked it, I decided to do some online investigating.
Yeah.
I didn't want to stay in a home that people lived in unless I knew some things about the people we were going to stay with. And I was put at ease when I noticed that the woman who oversees this Airbnb, her husband's a pastor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And she is a writer, a speaker, and a podcaster.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm like, this is right up our alley. So we booked it.
Yeah.
And then she did some snooping and found out that I'm a podcaster, right? And I'm an author.
Yeah.
And she listened to the episode with Mary DeMuth and loved it. Listened to the episode with Kristen Dreesen, loved it. And so she was really excited. And we were able to connect with her and her husband. And she's coming on the podcast. She's coming on Revival Town because she's the author of this book called Disgraced. And the dis is crossed out to where it says Grace. I don't know if we can show a picture.
Yep. It's on there right there. Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So it's by Teresa Whiting, and her and her husband Greg, great people, and just really enjoyed connecting with them. But I'm not going to say much about that until we bring her on.
Yeah.
But it was a divine appointment. So we knew we were in the right place.
Yeah.
It was still a 20-minute drive to Southeastern, but it was worth it because we got to meet some new friends.
Yeah, connect.
So it was cool. So we get to this conference, and it's called DBG Summit. Aaron Hall, who's been on the conference, I've known him for 6 years. We met finally in person there, which was cool. And Matt was there, and Stephen McWhirter, and John Groves, and Sammy Lopez, and Rob Foltz, all who have been on, Malachi O'Brien, all of them I've met through this summit, and all that I just mentioned have been on Revival Town podcast.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some others here real soon as well. But there were... it began Friday night, so there was a session Friday night, 3 speakers back to back to back. And then Saturday, there was a morning session with 3 speakers, and then we had a break for lunch, came back, and we did worship. There was another speaker, and then a Q&A panel. It was just incredible. So,
what made it incredible?
I would say, I was going to make something up, but, honestly, one of the reasons... I was encouraged, I'm sitting in a room with, honestly, Andy, 30 people, because this is not this huge conference that's expensive, that's marketed. By the way, everything was paid for. It was free. And it's simply to raise up people who are willing to use their platform to share the gospel. And there were people in the room with huge platforms, and you would never know it because they're humble and they love Jesus. And it was a very intimate setting. There was some worship, and we kneeled, and there was some, the worship was really intimate as well. It was just an encouraging. I mean, I was challenged. I was inspired. I wept. I mean, Zach Merkreebs, who is the pastor of the Asbury Revival. Remember, we had your friend J.D. Walt on, who is on staff there and was helping navigate all of that. Well, the pastor who preached the night at start, who was the main speaker throughout that, was there, and it was just he rocked us. So the theme for this year's summit was seeking God for revival, and the first thing he said when he got up is, "Don't seek revival, seek God." He said, "I don't have a prescription for revival, but I have a description." And he shared some stories. He shared some things that you won't read,
right,
in the media. Like, and I don't even. He didn't say we couldn't share it. So, one of the things that I don't think really anyone realizes is revival like that. It disrupts your life.
Right.
Where his life was turned upside down for those 16 days. It's just revival. And, more than 100,000 people showed up on this little town in Wilmore, Kentucky, and pockets of it were spreading to other campuses and universities and the media and all these celebrity artists and people coming just to sit in the room. And what was so great, and one of the things that JD brought out when he was here is, there was never a celebrity speaker or a celebrity worship artist. Right. It was all student-led. Yeah. And that's how you just know it was a move of God. But one of the things he shared was, he had to have security. And it was bothersome. So there was one night he just wanted to go home. He wanted to sleep. He had his little girls with him, and his wife was in the car, and he was walking to the car, and somebody pulled a gun on him. It was the only time that he decided to go to his car without security. And somebody pulled a gun on him, pointed it at him, and said, "God told me to kill you to stop this revival."
What?
Yep. So he was calm, and he got his girls in the car, said, "I'm going to talk to you." And then he just looked at the guy and he said, "What can I do for you?" And the guy just put the gun down and started crying and weeping, and then security rushed in and grabbed him, and he went home. But those are the kind of stuff you're not reading about. But it was his whole session was on being willing to be an empty vessel. And he went through Romans chapter 12, and he went through 2 Kings chapter 1, and the story he told was Elisha and the widow, when she needed empty vessels because the man of God, the prophet Elisha, said, "Go find empty vessels." And then they were filled with oil, and when she ran out of vessels, that's when the oil stopped flowing. So he said this: you can get in your prayer closet with the wrong posture, and it's just a storage closet. That's a lot of people that they're seeking followers, they're seeking recognition, when God, he is just looking somebody who says, "I'm willing to be an empty vessel. Fill me up." Yeah. What happens is we fill ourselves up with stuff that's not God, and that limits the amount of oil that God can pour out of us. So, he said, I got to read this to you. He said, find it here.
No, you're good.
He said this, God spoke to him and said, "I've pressed you in private so I can pour oil out of you in public." And revival is you're being crushed, right? You're being pressed so God can squeeze that oil out of you to fill those empty vessels. And there are people that are looking to preach only to the prestigious, right? So he said this: are we trying to attract Like, what posture do we want? Are we trying to track the Pharisee on the front row, or the sinner in the back row saying, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me?
That's good, yeah.
And it was a time where he said, I just want everybody to get on your knees, get on your face, and let's just seek God, and let's just tell God I'm ready to be used. And, the hardest days of his life were the revival.
Wow.
Those 16 days. It was really just a powerful time of gathering.
Which is refreshing, right, for you especially, because when we're looking at stuff like things of God that have happened, throughout the globe over the years, and granted, there's been some stuff like we know afterwards it hasn't been God, it's been manufactured, it's been man-made, but something that is like Asbury and others that are legit, you're right, it disrupts. I mean, you think about it, you're going to a meeting one night, now you're there every day, all day for the next 16 days. Everything goes on pause, right?
Right.
Did he share about that, like just the actual experience, not so much from speaking, but like around campus and what people were feeling? And
he said nobody really knew what to expect. God was just moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just, he said there was a family from Mexico drove 35 hours in a van with 8 people, their family members, just so they could sit in the room and grab him for 15 minutes so he could pray for their daughter to be healed of the same disease that killed his own daughter.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's... Wow.
And he did. He prayed. He said he doesn't know what happened. There was just so much. It was just, it seems like kind of a blur.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, something that can't be manufactured. So he said this, we're the most resourced church in the history of the church. But what's our posture?
Right.
Is our posture the presence of God? Is our posture one of prayer, where we're truly seeking God's face? We're willing to be an empty vessel. He said, again, he's talking to pastors, leaders, and influencers. He said, I don't care how many followers you have. What's inside you?
That's good.
Yeah. So,
that's good, because you see that and hear of it. And
yeah. He goes, you want an outpouring? Find some empty vessels. And the students were empty vessels, just willing to... Yeah. It just, again, you can't manufacture it. Yeah. There's not a prescription.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah. Wow. Well, any other highlights, Chuck?
Yeah, I would say Dave Wilkerson's son, Gary Wilkerson, was there.
Oh, yeah.
And, and I've connected with him recently on social media, and just, I love his stuff. I told him I just love everything he posts, his heart. He loves God.
Where's he based at? Is he in New York?
He's in Colorado.
Colorado, okay.
Yep. And, he talked a little bit about growing up with it, having your dad, Dave Wilkerson, and for those listening, if you don't know who Dave Wilkerson is, perhaps you've heard of the story of Nicky Cruz and the Cross of the Switchblade. There's a best-selling book and a movie all about Dave Wilkerson's life, and he's passed on, but, his nephews, Rich Wilkerson Jr., right?
Yeah.
Or cousins are, I forget how they're all related, but they're like cousins.
Sure.
And but Gary shared about, man, what it's like to grow up with people have expectations for him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably expectations that he hasn't agreed to.
Right.
But God's using him, and he has his own voice, and he was powerful. He's kind of soft-spoken. He's got a little bit longer hair like mine. He's older than me, but he wears hearing aids like me. I'm like, man, this is my kind of dude, But he said this, pastoring is like, a lot of people think pastoring is like a walk in the park. He said, yeah, but it's Jurassic Park.
That's classic.
So what he shared. He went through the temptation of Christ, Matthew chapter 4, and he did an excellent job of comparing the temptation to what we deal with, even with, being in the digital age with iPhones and comparison and wanting to, power and to be on top and have that platform. And Jesus was tempted and he was obedient, and obedience is the key. And what's so interesting is this is something that and maybe you've thought of this before. I've never thought of this in all my years. This is crazy. I've been pastoring the same church for over 25 years. I've never really thought about this. But if you recall, in Matthew chapter 3, Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit came upon him in the form of a dove.
Yeah.
And a voice from heaven spoke, and God the Father said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." That's what God said.
Yeah.
He went straight to the wilderness, and the first thing the devil said is, "If you are really the Son of God."
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And immediately the enemy tried to get him to question his identity.
Yeah.
And that's what the enemy does with us. So we've got to drown out the voice of the enemy with the Word of God. Yeah. And it's important to know the Word of God because the enemy knows the Word of God, right? Yeah. And he even tried to use the Word on Jesus. Jesus said, listen, it is also written.
Yeah.
It is also written.
He came back at him with it.
Yeah. So his message was just phenomenal. And then when Jesus, he passed the test, and remember, the devil took him up to a high mountain. Yeah. And I'll give you all this. I'll give you. This is for you. What did Jesus do? Jesus went and he went straight from that to deliver the Sermon on the Mount. And there were crowds that followed him. And it says this, Jesus, in Matthew 4, after Jesus speaks the word, angels show up, the devil flees. He starts his ministry. Jesus traveled through the region of Galilee, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. News about him spread as far as Syria, and people soon began bringing to him all who were sick, and large crowds follow him wherever he went. The enemy was trying to offer that to him, but God said, "Nope, I got you."
Yeah.
Wow. So say no to the devil, say yes to Jesus. Come on.
Tell you what, I think Chuck got a few sermon ideas.
Man, let's go. Let's go.
So Chuck, bringing this bit to a close, and then we'll get to your foot story. Because you didn't share it yet, did you?
Yeah. Well, they know. I mean, there's not a whole lot of story to it, but I'll give the details.
Yeah. But could you just pray for those that are listening? Pray something that impacted you, that you can now impact the folks that are listening. Yeah. Something that happened to you while you were there, and pray it over the folks that are listening. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right, let's do that.
All right. Jesus, thank you so much for who you are and the opportunity we have to be here today. And I don't know, Andy doesn't know what those who are listening are going through, but you do. And you're big enough to meet those needs. And perhaps there's somebody in the back of the room who is desperately crying out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." I just pray, Lord, that you will minister to that heart, that you will meet that need. I pray, Lord, that you will rescue people right now, those who need rescue. Just as I sat in a room with these other men of God and tears streaming down my face, God, we want to be used by you so others can be set free by the power of the gospel. And I just pray today, maybe someone's listening that hasn't said yes to you, truly hasn't surrendered to you. I pray that this is the day that they will confess you, Jesus, that they will believe in their heart, that they will say with their mouth, God, that you were raised from the dead. And I pray that today will be the day of salvation, and that today will be a day of miracles where you answer prayers and you rescue. In Jesus' name.
Well, thanks, Chuck. Now, why don't you Why don't you share the story?
All right. So we took the conference ended, so Sunday morning we went to church in Lakeland, a family worship center. It's a huge church.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. And then we took off and we went to the beach. We drove to the ocean, went to Tampa, and Ashton wanted to fish. So we actually fished in a bay, and then he fished in the ocean. And while he was fishing in the ocean, I was standing on these rocks, and I was using the background of the ocean as the perfect backdrop for some TikTok videos to implement what I had just learned at this conference.
People, you know exactly where this is going.
So I'm doing this, and I have, and no one else can hear my phone because I have it streaming into my hearing aids.
Yeah.
And there are people around, and I don't care. I'm like lifting my hands in worship, and I'm like, and
because you're listening to music.
Yeah, I'm listening to music. People are probably walking by, and I'm doing a video to where I'm worshiping. So people are walking by, going, "This guy's a weirdo." I didn't care. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And so we, we're pretty much done. We're ready to leave. We were ready to pack up, and I stepped off this big rock onto a rock that was level with the sand, but because when the tide comes in, water covers it at night, so there's like moss growing on it.
Yeah.
And I slipped, man. And this is honestly the Lord. Had I fell backwards, I would have split my head open on the rocks.
Oh my!
But I was all like wobbly, and I went forward, and I shoved my foot, and there was like a little bit of a gouge in one of the rocks, and it sliced open my foot, but I didn't know it at first. I was like, "Oh man, I can't believe this. We're leaving," and And then I looked down, and there is blood, and it's not pretty. And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh man, I'm not going to the ER. I'm not doing this." And so I just walking through the sand. We're packing up our stuff, and I took a picture. I'm not going to show the picture, but on the sand was 2 big chunks of skin.
Oh man!
Yeah, I took a picture and I sent it to my wife. She's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Part of my foot." So we went to Walgreens and I bought some peroxide and these big bandages, and I dressed it all up. So.
Oh man! Well, you know what's next, don't you?
Hey, Tate is made.
Yeah, let's do. I've got a great one because it just goes along with what you just did.
All right.
If you're listening for the first time, this is where I throw an English phrase, word, rhyming Cockney slang word at Chuck, who's from America. I'm from England, as you can tell. And there's a lot of differences, which is including words we use that you don't use, right? And so I'm going to put this straight into context. So Chuck, you were a bit of a nincompoop.
A nincompoop?
A nincompoop.
Well, I've used that word.
You have?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've said that.
Is that English, or are you saying?
I've seen it in movies, heard it. Don't be a nincompoop. Don't be a moron. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a plonker.
Yes!
Don't be a nincompoop.
Man, you got it.
Man. Don't walk across the street when you're crocheting a dream catcher.
He is a nincompoop.
A nincompoop. Don't split your head open when you're making TikTok videos on the beach.
Oh, mate, you got it. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Good stuff.
Well, why don't you let people know about the podcast? Obviously, tell them about the social media channels that we have at Revival Town Podcast, and let them know about the show. We may even throw a few... some new designs on merch. You've been talking about getting some new designs on merch. We'll get that up in the next few weeks. Right. That sound good?
Yep, let's do it. Just in time for Christmas.
Yeah. But before Christmas, everyone, make sure you join us next week for a special Thanksgiving edition of Revival Town. It's going to be fun. So, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Let people know about Revival Town, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Revival Town Podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media and remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, head on over to revivaltownpodcast.com.